Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. American oil saved the world from an energy catastrophe, with Iran closing Hormuz tighter than a burglary suspect in a cavity search. With a big assist from China, who made lemonade from lemons from a slowing economy that slashed oil imports. Together, these canceled nearly 3/4 of the Hormuz disruption in the Iran war. It also knocked oil prices down 30% from highs, even as the war keeps going. And so with that war going into month 3, the biggest surprise so far is the world did not run out of oil. Europeans are not, in fact, heating their apartments with IKEA catalogs, and the reason is simple. American oil went goblin mode, pumping an additional 4 million barrels of oil in just 10 weeks. That nearly doubled America's oil exports to over 8 million. In fact, the extra barrels would have been the world's number 4 exporter pre-war. All that pump canceled nearly a third of the 13 million barrel Hormuz squeeze. That's 20 million minus 7. They're still getting out with backup pipelines and trucks. Toss in 1.5 million of new pump from Canada, Norway, Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. And nearly 40% of the Hormuz blockage is already replaced. That has also taken American oil revenue from $100 billion a year pre-war to nearly $300 billion, making American oil exports bigger than agriculture for the first time in history. It's even taken some of the edge off oil prices for American consumers, with American oil, West Texas Intermediate, almost $10 cheaper than Europe's Brent. This is why you drill. Incidentally, green energy was as useful as a hooker to blood drive as you would imagine. Now, beyond the pump, the other half of Hormuz replacement was Asia slashing demand. Some was emergency measures, so rolling factory shutdowns, every other day driving, shutting universities so the darlings don't riot. Much bigger was prices lowering demand, as in people drive less when gas hits $5 a gallon, called demand destruction. Put it together, and pump and dump replaced 3/4 of the Hormuz shock. So in raw numbers, we lost an aggregate billion barrels of oil since the war started. That's 13 million a day times 80-odd days. But global oil reserves fell only a quarter of that, about 3 million. So it's next, when the war kicked off, markets went straight to the 1970s oil shock. Morgan Stanley and Citi predicted 150 oil. IMF's former chief economist predicted 200. They were going to be eating the pets. They were going to be out of oil in a couple months. In fact, here we are with lower prices than when the Ukraine war started, while stock markets are up since the war. This is not your grandfather's oil crisis. Still, even at 3 million a day, maybe it is not a gaping chest wound, but reserves are running out, meaning if the war is still going in 6 months, we will be back to the doom porn. Is it time for the kids to unlearn to code? 13 years into the AI jobs panic, we are finally putting some numbers on the board, with Facebook and Morgan Stanley announcing mass layoffs. Last week, Mark Zuckerberg announced he's cutting 8,000 jobs, almost 10%. Most of these are canceled roles, just 2,000 are actual pink slips. Now, the move was framed as AI since Meta simultaneously announced it's plowing over $100 billion to turn its hilariously bad Llama AI, which you've probably never heard of, into something less embarrassing. And so Meta joins a parade of tech luminaries shedding jobs, 7,000 at Microsoft, 1,000 at Epic Games, a rumored 30,000 at Oracle. The big one, Amazon, which trimmed future hiring by 600,000 jobs granted over a decade. Tallied up, and according to tech layoff tracker TrueUp, we're running just shy of 30,000 tech layoffs a month. It's not much better on Wall Street, where Morgan Stanley just announced 2,500 job cuts, 3% of their workforce. Citi is laying off a more impressive 10%, Capital One threw 1,000 in the pot. Now, there's no aggregate tracker for Wall Street layoffs since nobody likes them, but it's ballpark 2/3 of tech, so maybe 20,000 a month. So what is growing? Healthcare by a mile, along with skilled trades, energy, logistics, the AI build-out. For those who don't have any particular skills, personal services, restaurants, childcare, elder care, fitness trainers, Uber Eats. Now, some of these actually pay great, nursing and the trades, but most pay a lot less than tech and finance. In the long run, automation lifts all boats. A house painter today makes 20 times what he did before the Industrial Revolution, meaning when the smoke clears, Starbucks and pet sitting pay six figures. The problem is that takes a while. It can take decades for that smoke to clear, and longer if government keeps making it hard to start a business or create a job. Meaning we could be looking at an entire lost generation of overeducated Gen Zs flipping burgers, dreaming of burning it all down. So as such, we are now 13 years into the AI job panic. That kicked off in 2013 with an Oxford paper predicting half of all jobs would be gone. In fact, since then, jobs grew by 16 million. So we got plenty of work, but expect AI to keep replacing the high-paid jobs like tech and finance, really across cubicle world, from corporate America to universities to the mothership of useless workers, government. Junior analysts will eventually become nurses, coders will become electricians, marketing coordinators shall run warehouses, or even bartenders. But near term, there's going to be a lot of young grads who feel they got bait and switched with that 100,000 college degree that AI gobbled for lunch. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold, paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/ProfSaintAnge. That's CoinKite.com/ProfSaintAnge. Okay, back to our show. A new study finds most immigrant households in America are on welfare, including legal migrants, which is weird because a rich country can cherry pick the top 0.1% of immigrants, the Elon Musks, Peter Thiels, Alexander Graham Bells, draining the brains, talents, and capital of the world. Instead, we mostly import welfare cases. The numbers come from the Center for Immigration Statistics, who tally by country of origin, finding a low of 19% for Canadian immigrants, which is still too high. It should be 0. Then it escalates fast, hitting 1 in 3 Chinese immigrants, half of Colombians, 2/3 of Mexicans, and over 80% of Afghans, and, of course, Somalis. Altogether, 47% of immigrant households use one or more of cash welfare, food stamps, Medicaid, Section 8 housing, which is nearly double the rate of natives. Not very cherry-picked. Gets worse because millions more take child tax credit, which is $2,200 per year, and earned income tax credit, EITC, which gives migrants up to $8,000 per year. Of course, for illegals, it's much worse. CIS estimates almost 2/3 access traditional welfare, and once they have the anchor baby or open a leering centers, it is off to the races. Summing it up, according to the Federation for American Immigration Reform, illegals alone are draining $150 billion a year, taking 6 times in welfare what they pay in taxes. So how did it get so bad? Before the 1960s, immigration to the U.S. was lean and the quality was high. We banned migrants likely to on welfare, along with communists, and national quotas favored Northwest Europe. This all changed in the 1965 Hart-Celler Act, which abolished national origins, replaced with family reunification instead of skills. So instead of high-quality migrants, the system shifted to poor countries that have massive families get one in, the whole village is in. This combined with the 1960s welfare state, Lyndon B. Johnson's so-called Great Society, that created a $1 trillion magnet that drew in tens of millions of third worlders. So Hart-Celler opened the barn doors, welfare called the entire world to feast. Annual legal migration went from 200,000 to over 1 million. That's not counting illegals. America's foreign-born population went from 5% in 1969 to 1 in 5 today, 1 in 4 if you count illegals, who now make up a third of welfare cases that were meant for poor Americans. So as Trump has focused on illegals as he should, but we also need to fix an immigration system that imports 540 welfare cases for every cherry pick. Restricting immigration to Europe and maybe Japan, Korea, and Taiwan is not going to happen anytime soon, but we can do what Japan, Korea, and Taiwan do, which is an immigrant point system so you do take only the best. All three use a mixture of education, salary, concrete skills, IT finance, investment capital, and a history of starting successful businesses. This eliminates the welfare cases, it dramatically reduces the criminals, and it turns immigrants into an asset who create more jobs and pay more taxes than they take. Alas, cherry picking also reduces the number of migrants. There's only so many cherries in the world, meaning Democrats will fight it tooth and nail, but America cannot be the world's welfare office and still remain a middle-class country. In case you still have hope for the next generation, according to Fortune magazine, the stay-at-home boyfriend is now a thing. In fact, it's spreading like cancer, as in men who do not work, they do not go to school, they don't do much of anything, sponging off their woman to play Halo, vape mango ice, lecture her on Marvel Universe canon, and pretend to do dishes while she puts on the big boy pants. According to the magazine, there are now 7.2 million of these losers. In fact, sociologists have a name for it, NEET, as in not in education, employment, or training. They're up over 1 million in the past decade and now make up 1 in 8 young men. It's getting worse fast. According to the Fed, in the past 12 months, women gained 300,000 jobs, but men fell by 142,000. Past 2 years, 2/3 of all jobs went to women. So what do these men do? According to a study in the prestigious Journal of Political Economy, they spend 70% of their time shockingly playing video games. 2/3 supplement their sugar mama with welfare, food stamps, unemployment, disability, Medicaid. So what's driving it? Easy government and the broad culture punishes providers, especially male providers, while parasites get rewarded, especially since COVID, when welfare skyrocketed by 50%, since they rubber-stamped everybody, not just the Somalis. This drove welfare fraud, of course, which is now estimated over $500 billion, which is enough to eliminate income tax for everybody up to $80,000. It was crack cocaine for young men who got better things to do than paying bills. Indeed, since COVID, men have dropped out of the labor force at 3.5 times the rate of women. Zooming out, in 1948, 87% of men and just 1 in 3 women worked. Now there are fewer men with a payroll job than women. Meanwhile, when men do work, they are gutted. For blue collars, it was illegals taking your job for $12 an hour, while corporate America mass discriminated against men using DEI, especially white men. One study found white men, who are 1/3 of the workforce, got just 3% of corporate jobs in the wake of BLM. Meanwhile, wages for men are flat since 1973, while blue-collar earnings are down 20% thanks to illegals. So work doesn't pay. They won't hire you anyway. Government's paying you to sit on the couch. And with another 7 million men living on the couch, women have so few options they will take what they can get. Now, this is rough for the women. It's exhausting. There's zero chance of building wealth. They don't have kids because they can't afford them if the guy is playing Halo all day. There's zero margin for error if she runs into work trouble with the kids. But it's catastrophic for men. Studies say once they fall off the treadmill, they stay off, plunging into depression with no purpose and no goals. Men now make up 70% of homeless and 80% of suicides. Men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide. So at 6, progressives demolished the load-bearing walls of the American family, culturally and economically. Men were treated as seed corn to be eaten instead of planted. Now, Gen Z is already struggling with house prices and AI replacing jobs. With male providers dropping like flies, expect fewer families, fewer kids, and more men who check out figuratively and literally. A word from our sponsor. Stocks and even gold are all over the place. If you're ready to diversify, Abundant Minds makes Bitcoin mining simple, transparent, and human. You can deduct every penny thanks to Trump's big beautiful bill. It's a 401k for Bitcoin mining. Founded by husband-wife team Bo and Christine Marie Turner after losing $500,000 to broken promises in the mining industry, Abundant Mines was built to protect investors. You own the machines, and they make it turnkey with hosting in their facilities in Oregon. Pricing is clear with one flat monthly fee and no surprises, and they guarantee uptime so you keep earning day in, day out. If you want easy diversification without pressure, learn more at abundantmines.com/Peter to get some of your first Bitcoin mine for free as a gift to my audience. The biggest risk in Bitcoin isn't volatility, it is custody. Because Bitcoin removes the safety net, there is no bank to call, no reset button if something goes wrong. The reality is, most people are not properly set up. They hold Bitcoin but rely on exchanges, incomplete wallet setups, and have no real plan for privacy or inheritance. This is exactly what the Bitcoin way solves. They help you move from exposure to actual ownership, self-custody done right, privacy, inheritance, even running your own node, all set up with you step by step. They never touch your Bitcoin. They're your support team. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Peter to book a free call and go from where you are today to a much stronger setup. Now back to our show. Why is Congress so useless and can it be fixed? With voter ID crashing and burning under the useless stewardship of the Rhino establishment, it's worth asking, why is Congress so useless? By margins of almost 2-1, cross-party, voters want secure borders, foreign aid slashed to basically zero. By 3-1, they want less federal spending. 4-1 wants less federal debt, lower taxes, lower immigration, tougher crackdown on violent crime. Voter ID is 5-1, including a strong majority Democrats. Smaller deficits are 9-1, yet none of this happens. Instead, voters are the tax donkey, inflation sponge, and designated villain who gets hit in the head with a brick by a homeless crackhead, while both parties fight over who gets to apologize. Now, the filibuster gets blamed. The Senate ruled that laws need 60% of votes, meaning only uniparty-approved laws get through. But we're talking stuff with 3-1, 5-1, 9-1 support cross-party. These should sail through Congress like 97-3, and yet they do not. The answer, alas, is simple. The voters don't matter. They get outbid by special interests in both parties. A widely cited paper by a pair of left-wing political scientists at Princeton and Northwestern analyzed 1,700 policy issues over a 20-year period and found popularity among voters has zero influence whether something becomes a law, meaning a policy with 80% support, everybody loves it, stands no better chance of becoming law than a policy with 30% support, everybody hates it. So what does matter? Preferences of donors, special interests like unions and NGOs, and the richest voters. In other words, this is not a democracy, it is an oligarchy. So how to fix it? Term limits are popular, although the data is very mixed. Newbies in Congress become more dependent on lobbyists, and the permanent staffers eyeing future lobbyist job offers. Campaign finance reform is also popular, but the trick is the left is very good at playing the system. So the lost influence of oil companies and manufacturers is captured by in-kind left-wing donors like NGOs and unions. So what would fix it? 60 years ago, economist Manker Olson summed up the problem: concentrated benefits, diffuse costs. In other words, a given policy is a small deal for the typical voter, pay $3 a year for the sugar cartel, but it's a very big deal for the sugar cartel. Multiply that across every industry, every NGO issue, every teachers union, and it becomes a straitjacket. So you've got to change that ratio. The easiest is move stuff from federal to state or local, where voter benefits are 50 to 500 times more concentrated. Normies can defeat special interests on a homeless encampment down the street or getting porn out of their local school. Even better is get government out altogether. End the honeypot so there is nothing for special interests to bid on. And the Fed and the administrative state let Wall Street fund its own bailouts and let the leering centers raise donations or shut down. So what's next? If you break the special interest oligarchy, you get a Democrat Party that does not lock its most faithful voters into Detroit hellscapes. You get a Republican Party that does fewer bailouts for Wall Street, fewer wars for Lockheed. And you get voters who no longer see government as a predator. Congress, alas, will fight tooth and nail to give nothing to states or, God forbid, taxpayers. But if voters can break through one time, it resets the game. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.